Hi everyone, you all saw the interview with Piers and Daddy Jackson on CNN. I know, you all pay attention to what Daddy Jackson wanted to do to admit us. But beyond words, look at what we have in this video. And I think you'll be surprised. Let's go.
And my exclusive interview with Michael Jackson's father. Jackson's father, Joe Jackson, speaks out as he rarely has before.
They treated him like Howard Hughes. Family couldn't get to him, like they should have.
Piers Morgan tonight. And later, my exclusive interview with Michael Jackson's father. A very rare encounter with a very emotional Joe Jackson in parts. It's a fascinating interview. That's coming up later on. It's hard to imagine, but it's been 3.5 years since Michael Jackson died. Millions of people around the world loved him, but of course no one knew him quite the way that his own father did. Joseph Jackson rarely gives interviews, but he joins me tonight exclusively, along with a single member of your family, your wife, your sons, your daughters, Michael, and finally I get to interview the boss.
Yeah, the boss. I'm glad to have you interviewing me because I'm going all over the world. They never went to jail. They wasn't in no gangs or nothing. They were brought up professionally and was nice, yes.
But do you have any... You may have been a little bit too tough on some of them?
Well, I'm glad I was tough because look what I came out with. I came out with some kids that everybody loved all over the world. The world don't know anything too much about Michael as far how he was brought up. But he was brought up, I made sure that he respected the older people, yes.
Tell me about Michael and your relationship with him.
Michael was the type of kid, you know, he was a good kid and very easy to learn. He hit one thing once and he could really do it just like the person that he listened to doing it. And by him being that way, he was able to be Michael Jackson because he looked good on stage and when he performed, everybody loved the way he did.
Do you think parents today are too soft on their children? Do you think there's a lack of respect because of that?
So one of the reasons I say that is because kids nowadays are killing their parents in some cases, and the parents say, let's get into this beating thing. There's no such thing as beating a kid. You whipped them and punished them for something they did, and they wouldn't do it again. That's the way I was.
It's not like that anymore. You know, many people say, well, you know, you can't hit a child. I interviewed your wife, Catherine, and she said this about you.
I didn't think he was too tough, but back in those days, everybody raised their children about the same. If you did something wrong, it was terribly wrong, you got a scolding for it, and you also got a licking, as they called it. But today, you can't do that. So Michael looked back at those times, and they said he was abused.
should have made sure, what I did, made sure that my kids was good kids. Made sure that they understood what I was trying to do. But since Michael got grown and has kids of his own, he understands what I was going through.
You're a grandfather to Michael's 3 children, as well as others. I wanted to talk to you about whether you're as tough with them as you were with your own children. I suspect you're not. I bet you're a bit of a pussycat now, aren't you, Joe?
No, I'm a good
Many of them have since enjoyed. How do you respond to that?
Well, I had to be like that way because during those times it was hard and you had a lot. There, you know, in the area where we were living.
This is Gary in Indiana.
Gary, Indiana, and I had to make sure that they didn't
almost all of it
get in any type of trouble and things of that sort.
You found it hard, because you were tough with them and disciplined and wanted to be, you found it hard to be too demonstrative, to tell them too much that you love them. And some of them found that quite difficult to deal with.
Well,
let me play you an example. I interviewed Janet.
Yeah, okay.
And she said this. Watch this clip.
One time I tried to call him Dad.
And what happened?
He said no. He said no. He said, I'm Joseph. You call me Joseph. I'm Joseph to you. So your father tells you one time. You don't do it again. Yeah, it is. I mean, I wish our relationship was different, but I know that he loves me.
Ever since I was born, Daddy has been the best father you could ever imagine. And I just wanted to say I love him.
Michael Jackson memorial, the heartbreak of his daughter Paris, back now exclusively with Michael's father, Joseph Jackson, and his former manager, Dieter Weisner. Tough for the kids, that, Joe, more than anybody, I felt. It was such a public thing, and poor Paris, you know, she's just a young girl who's lost her father. Very, very hard. What could you say to her, as somebody who's been through so much yourself? What did you say to her afterwards?
Well, Paris is... even Michael said she's a piece of work, you know, because, you know, most girls are hard to raise. Piers, they're hard to raise. They're more harder than boys. But she's a nice girl, and most girls takes to the father anyway, too, you know. But she's a good girl, but you have to work with her a little bit, too.
Are you as tough with Michael's kids because he's not around as you were with Michael and his siblings?
No, those are my grandkids, and they'd be glad. I was just with them yesterday, you know. And so with Prince and Paris wouldn't get out of the bed, you know. She was still in the bed, but Prince and Blanket was there, and they were glad to. Matter of fact, Blanket was making a video himself.
Really?
Yeah.
And when you see them, does it take you back to when your kids were young? Do you see Michael?
Yeah, in Blanket, I see Michael there, yes. But they're good kids. They're being handled well, and Catherine was really looking at those kids, and they love their grandma. Yes, they really love her, and they obey her, too.
Where were you when you heard that Michael had died? I was in Las Vegas. I got a call, Piers. I got a call from a fan, and this says, "Mr. Jackson, say something is wrong. Say I see an ambulance there at Michael's place.
And the ambulance took off. The saddest part about the whole thing was fire department following the ambulance. Michael tried to reach me. He says, "Call my father." This is before he passed. He would know how to get me out of this. But I was right there. But what bothers me in touch with when he called for my help, but I couldn't help him. That,
what was your relationship?
They had a motive to keep family away, but I guess because they was saying to the fact that too many families hanging around may cause some type of a disturbance. But what we're trying to do,
had lined up 50 concerts
with this young man. Yes.
Knowing him as you did, do you think he was physically capable of doing that number of shows? Did you know he was doing that number of shows?
Yes, I did know he was doing that number of shows, and it was a reason why. It was a motive for those shows, because Michael was going to take that money and build a children's hospital. That's what he wanted to do, to build for all the sick kids there. He needed to make sure they had the right type of help.
When you speak about Michael with children like that, I can't not ask you about the court cases which scandalized his later years. As his father, how did you feel when he was accused of...
There's a reason why that happened, and they was trying to take control over Michael's life. Michael's paid out a lot of money, what it was something like $22 million, to keep this thing hushed down.
Do you wish he'd never done that?
I wish he had never done that, but since he done it, the media, didn't grab it as much as it did because it was hushed up. But Michael was afraid of the media because they would never get nothing right.
Worry around children. And the reason I ask you is, a lot of people felt, here's a man in his 40s, mid-40s, having sleepovers with young boys. And most people would think that's inappropriate. Michael wasn't a normal guy. Everybody knows that. But did you ever worry that the perception of what he was doing wasn't good for him or his image?
Well, Piers, Michael was a big old kid himself. He was still had the mind of a kid. But he loved kids so much, and things that they didn't have, he tried to help them to have it.
You never saw anything that concerned you?
That's nothing concerned him.
You never felt...
We knew Michael.
Right.
We knew our son. We knew how we raised him. And we knew that, yes.
Let's take another break. Let's come back and talk more about Michael, more about his legacy, more about him as a businessman. I'll talk to you about that after the break. Back with me now exclusively is Michael Jackson's father, Joseph. Michael's business side in a moment. I just want to ask you one thing, Joe. Do you wish you would attract sharks? Let me bring you in here because you were a business manager for Michael for a very long time. You brought some fascinating tapes. These are audio tapes. And I want to just go through some of this because I once interviewed Michael in the late 90s. And I was struck there was another discussing with you, I think, about a plan to buy Marvel, the comic business, back in 2001 or 2, I think it was. Let's listen to this.
We could easily go into Universal and buy. We would own Jaws, E.T., Close Encounters, all the classics from Universal. Own all of that stuff. That would allow us to do a channel. Part of the Marvel channel can be not only the Marvel characters, but Marvel films like the catalog. We could do anything we want, from restaurants to retail, theme parks.
We didn't accomplish our goals. All that I know is I did it. I did everything I wanted to do, and I did it my way, That's it. We changed the world.
I like his legacy to be that's what he wanted to be. Want everybody to care about him and to love him and keep doing the things that what he wanted to do. And he wanted to make people happy all over the world. You see, Piers, Michael's situation, if the world was like Michael, there would never be any wars. Everybody would get along. And that's the type of kid he was.